It was appalling to hear Donald Trump describe immigrants as drug dealers, rapists, and criminals. He's talking about people who love this country, work hard, and want nothing more than a chance to build a better life for themselves and their children. It's shameful.
Mexico is such an important problem. Mexican government's policies are pushing migration north. There isn't any sensible approach except to do what we need to do simultaneously, secure our borders with technology, personnel, physical barriers if necessary in some places, and we need to have tougher employer sanctions, and we need to try to incentivize Mexico to do more. If they've committed transgressions of whatever kind, they should be obviously deported.
In 1964, during the presidential election of that year, I was a Goldwater girl.
Voted against the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Would you do so today?
I would have to vote against it.
Extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
My first job was with the Children's Defense Fund.
Well, Hillary Clinton's an old friend, but they're not friends in politics. We profoundly disagreed with the forms of the welfare reform bill.
By the time Bill and I left the White House, welfare rolls had dropped 60%.
Many years after that, when many people are pronouncing welfare reform a great success, we've got growing child poverty. The poor are suffering.
I appreciate the actions begun yesterday by the governor and other leaders of South Carolina to remove the Confederate battle flag, recognizing it as a symbol of our nation's racist past that has no place in our present or our future. It shouldn't fly there. It shouldn't fly anywhere.
The same Confederate flag Bree Newsom took down from above the South Carolina State House represents the exact same slave-owning and traitorous Confederacy for which Bill Clinton signed a resolution stating that the highest star on the Arkansas flag represented. To this day, they still have an official Confederate Flag Day. And not only did Bill and Hillary never say anything about this, but for 12 years, they celebrated the Confederacy too.
Gay rights are human rights, and human rights are gay rights. LGBT Americans are our colleagues, our teachers, our soldiers, our friends, our loved ones. And they are full and equal citizens and deserve the rights of citizenship. That includes marriage. I support marriage for lesbian and gay couples.
Do you think New York State should recognize gay marriage?
No.
No. Okay.
I believe that marriage is not just a bond, but a sacred bond between a man and a woman.
I have been a critic of NAFTA from the very beginning.
My concerns about NAFTA expressed years ago have been well documented and verified.
I didn't have a public position on it.
I have spoken consistently against NAFTA.
And if you look at what I have been saying, it has been consistent.
I have been consistent.
You can go back and look at from the very beginning.
I was one of the voices in the administration warning about NAFTA.
Was one of the highlights of President Clinton's first term, passage of the North American Free Trade Agreement, also known as NAFTA. Critics blame NAFTA for the loss of manufacturing jobs in industrial states including Ohio and Pennsylvania. Hillary Clinton helped get NAFTA approved. She held at least 5 meetings to strategize about how to win congressional approval. She helped the White House block opposition from labor and environmental groups, and she was the featured speaker at a crucial meeting. Participants in that event said, quote, her remarks were totally pro-NAFTA. There was no equivocation for her support for NAFTA at the time.
Oh, I think that everybody is in favor of free and fair trade, and I think that NAFTA is proving its worth.
I think on balance, NAFTA has been good for New York and America.
It was supposed to be an example of Hillary Clinton's battle-tested experience.
I remember landing under sniper fire.
In the speech last week, Senator Clinton was referring to her visit to Tuzla, Bosnia in 1996 as First Lady. The brutal war was over, but hostilities continued. And though the trip was exactly 12 years ago tomorrow, the memories seemed etched in Clinton's mind.
There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicles to get to our base.
Problem is, that's not what happened. And we should know, CBS News accompanied the First Lady and daughter Chelsea on that Bosnia trip. That's Senator Clinton talking to me on the military flight into Tuzla. And these are the pictures we recorded of the greeting ceremony when the plane landed. Compare that to Senator Clinton's account.
I remember landing under sniper fire. There was no greeting ceremony, and we basically were told to run to our cars. Now that is what happened.
Thank you. There was no sniper fire either when Senator Clinton visited 2 Army outposts where she posed for photos, and no sniper fire back at the base where she sang at a USO show starring Sinbad and Sheryl Crow.
I never would have given President Bush the authority. I warned at the time it was not authority for a preemptive war. I believe we should withdraw starting within 60 days of my becoming president. So it is with conviction that I support this resolution as being in the best interests of our nation. A vote for it is not a vote to rush to war. It is a vote that puts awesome responsibility in the hands of our president. And it is a vote that says clearly to Saddam Hussein, this is your last chance. Disarm or be disarmed. The heavy assault on our post in Benghazi that took the lives of those brave men. We've seen rage and violence directed at American embassies over an awful internet video that we had nothing to do with.
There was never a video-inspired protest in Benghazi. Her spokesperson at the State Department, hours after the attack, said this: Benghazi has been attacked by militants. 1 hour before the attack in Benghazi, Chris Stevens walks a diplomat to the front gate. The ambassador didn't report a demonstration. He didn't report it because it never happened. An eyewitness in the command center that night on the ground said no protest, no demonstration. 2 intelligence reports that day. No protest, no demonstration. The attack starts at 3:42 Eastern Time, ends at approximately 11:40 p.m. that night. At 4:06, an ops alert goes out across the State Department. It says this: mission under attack, armed men, shots fired, explosions heard. No mention of a video, no mention of a protest, no mention of a demonstration. Your experts knew the truth. Your spokesperson knew the truth. Greg Hicks knew the truth. But what troubles me more is I think you knew the truth. You're looking at an email you sent to your family. Here's what you said. At 11 o'clock that night, approximately 1 hour after you told the American people it was a video, you say to your family, 2 officers were killed today in Benghazi by an al-Qaeda-like group. You tell the American people one thing, you tell your family an entirely different story. Also, on the night of the attack, you had a call with the president of Libya. Here's what you said to him. Ansar al-Sharia is claiming responsibility. A conversation with the Egyptian prime minister. You told him this: we know the attack in Libya had nothing to do with the film. It was a planned attack, not a protest. Let me read that one more time. We know, not we think, not it might be, we know the attack in Libya had nothing to do with the film. It was a planned attack, not a protest.
What was going on and why they were doing what they were doing?
No. Again, we were misled that there was supposedly protests and then something sprang out of that, an assault sprang out of that. And that was easily ascertained that was not the fact. And the American people could have known that within days, and they didn't know that.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
3 years ago, Hillary promised that when I went to the casket ceremony in Washington, she promised she would get back to me and tell me what happened. She has not called me. She has not contacted me. She has not given me any information except to tell me that I am not a member of the immediate family and I do not need to know.
They told you that?
Yes, they did, several times, over and over. She's lying. She's absolutely lying. She told me something entirely different at the casket ceremony. She said it was the cause of the video and that she would get back to me and tell me what happened with my son. I saw on TV the bloody fingerprints on the walls over there. I asked specifically, are those my son's fingerprints crawling down the wall, the bloody fingerprints? Nobody ever got back to me on that.
gave Hillary a hug and shook her hand, and she said, "We are going to have the filmmaker arrested who was responsible for the death of your son." And I think that you should look at everything she said. She made this statement not only to me, but to other family members. Also, a half hour after this happened, when they had the casket ceremony, she also lied to the American public, because she said, and these are her words as best as I can recall, rage was directed at American embassies as a result of that awful video that we were not responsible for.
We've seen rage and violence directed at American embassies over an awful internet video that we had nothing to do with.
She stood in front of my son's casket and blamed the rage directed at American embassies upon the video.
How does it feel to know that she told her family that your nephew died in an Al-Qaeda-like terrorist attack, but then she told your family that he died in a protest gone wrong because of a video?
That's consistent to her career as a serial liar. Without a doubt, you know, Mrs. Clinton really has a problem embracing the truth.
Secretary Clinton, a few days after the attack, what did she tell you then about your brother's death?
I spoke to my family about how sad that we should feel for the Libyan people, because they're uneducated, and that breeds fear, which breeds violence and leads to a protest. And, you know, I remember thinking at the time, wow, you know, how selfish of me. I never really thought about the Libyan people. I've been so consumed with my own grief and loss and concern. And, you know, when I think back now to that day and what she knew, you know, it shows me a lot about her character, that she would choose in that moment to basically perpetuate what she knew was untrue.
On the night of the attacks in Benghazi, you sent an email to your daughter, Chelsea, saying that Al-Qaeda lie group was responsible for the killing of the Americans. However, some of the families claim that you lied to them.
Hillary and Obama and Panetta and Biden and all of Susan Rice all told me it was a video when they knew it was not the video.
She's wrong. She's absolutely wrong.
Morgan Jones said he'd never felt so angry in his life. Only hours earlier, Ambassador Chris Stevens had sought him out, concerned about the security at the U.S. Special Mission compound, where Morgan was in charge of the Libyan Guard Force. Now the ambassador was dead, and the U.S. compound was engulfed in flames and overrun by dozens of heavily armed fighters.
We do not have any indication at this point of premeditation or pre-planned attacks. But it is
contrary to the White House's public statements, which were still being made a full week later. It's now well established that the Americans were attacked by Al-Qaeda in a well-planned assault. On his first drive through Benghazi, he noticed the black flags of Al-Qaeda flying openly in the streets, and he grew concerned about the guard force as soon as he pulled up to the U.S. compound.
Which brings us to Benghazi, an event that has been used to question her leadership ability and could affect her prospects for the presidency. Put yourself in the place of the American ambassador on the night of September 11th, 2012. Chris Stevens is in a small outpost in the northeastern city of Libya, Benghazi. He's heading off to bed when suddenly, look at this video, coming toward him, dozens of men armed with automatic rifles and rocket-propelled grenades. Stevens and his aide make their way into a fortified room, locking the steel doors. As he and his aide hide in the fortified room, attackers throw diesel fuel on the building, setting it aflame. Stevens and Sean Smith suffocate in the smoke. 2 former Navy SEALs also die that night at a CIA annex nearby, taken down by mortar bombs. But this is the central question asked by her critics. Did she do everything she could or should have done to make that outpost safe on the anniversary of 9/11? His last words in his diary, Chris Stevens, never-ending security threats.
Right. But were there security threats? Yes, and there are
There's a long list of countries where there are security threats to American interests.
But these were the highest, among the highest.
No, well, it would be in the top 25. It was not.
Not in the top 5, top 10?
Maybe in the top upper 10.
The situation in Benghazi was deteriorating fast. A cable in August, a month before the attack, warns about vulnerability. There had been 2 bomb attacks on the mission in the last 6 months. The Red Cross had pulled out of Benghazi. The British had left too.
You know, the criticism is it was a glaring, flashing red crisis there. The British were pulling out. There had already been attacks. There were cables being sent. Did you miss it? Did you miss the moment to prevent this from happening?
No.
Is there anything you personally should have been doing to make it safer in Benghazi?
Well, what I did was give very direct instructions.
You can hear the distress calls. You can hear the radio calls of the State Department personnel saying, we're going to die, we're going to die, we're going to die. The CIA station chief, where you were at the time, told you repeatedly, stand down. Use the words, stand down. Is that how you remember it?
Yeah, I mean, it was him. It was the chief of base, the deputy chief, and our team leader that were sitting on the front porch, and when he told me to stand down.
This is the ARB. The mission was far short of standards. Weak perimeter, incomplete fence, video surveillance needed repair.
Right.
They have said it's a systemic failure.
We know your son was asking for security before. Begging.
He told me on the phone the night before that, well, he was going to die.
I'll leave it to others to characterize this report, but I think it's pretty clear it's time to move on.
How do you feel, Dorothy, when you hear that response?
Well, it likens back to what I just said. I think that nobody in government can tell me how I feel, what I should feel about it. She has no right, nor does anyone in government have the right to tell me it's time to move on. They're not in my shoes. You know, I think that, you know, that's the essence of what they have done, is they've been dismissive.
When I got to work as Secretary of State, I opted for convenience to use my personal email account, which was allowed by the State Department, because I thought it would be easier to carry just one device for my work and for my personal emails instead of 2.
The State Department Inspector General says Clinton violated security guidelines when she used a private email server as Secretary of State. Clinton has said she did it for convenience.
What I did was allowed by the State Department, but
Clinton has never said who authorized her use of a private email server, and today we learned why. The internal audit found no evidence that the secretary requested or obtained guidance or approval. The report said diplomatic security officials did not and would not have signed off because the arrangement violated policies implemented in 2005.
There were no security breaches.
Clinton has long insisted her home server was secure. But the report cites emails from her private technology advisor warning in January 2011 that he had to shut down the server because he believed someone was trying to hack us. And while they did not get in, I didn't want them to have the chance to. Later that day, he sent a second message. We were attacked again, so I shut the server down for a few minutes. State Department IT staffers who expressed concerns about Clinton's setup were rebuffed. One was told by higher-ups the matter was not to be discussed any further. Another was instructed never to speak of the secretary's email system again.
The Inspector General's office of the State Department issued a report that concluded Hillary Clinton violated the Federal Records Act by not turning over all official emails before she left office. The report also found that there was no evidence she had requested or received approval to use her personal account for official business. Clinton all along has maintained the use of her server was allowed.
My personal email use was fully above board. It was allowed by the State Department, as they have confirmed.
What I did was allowed by the State Department.
You said it was allowed, too.
Yes, it was.
2 State Department officials raised concerns about Clinton's exclusive use of a private email server. A senior official in Clinton's office told them the matter was not to be discussed any further. He instructed them to, quote, never to speak of the secretary's personal email system again.